Welcome, learner, to your deep dive for April 15th, 2025, Part 1. This is your focused briefing, really designed to cut through the noise and give you the essential understanding of key developments shaping India right now. Think of it as your daily current affairs digest, specifically tailored with your UPSC preparation in mind. Now, some of these areas might ring a bell, maybe we've touched on them before. Consider those crucial points for revision. Okay, let's dive straight in.
Indeed. Today we're tackling quite a set of interconnected issues, really vital for understanding India's evolving landscape. We'll begin by looking at the engine of future growth, innovation in our startup ecosystem. And we'll pay close attention to the nuances, distinguishing consumer-facing ventures from the potentially transformative realm of deep tech.
Okay.
Following that, we'll navigate the complexities of regulating online betting and gaming in Karnataka. That's got significant legal and economic ramifications. We'll also examine the newly introduced code of standards for influencer marketing, a sector with, increasing societal impact.
Great.
And finally, we'll explore India's advancements in directed energy weapons and also address the ongoing parliamentary discourse surrounding the Digital Personal Data Protection Act and its implications for the fundamental right to information.
Okay, let's unpack this first area then.
Yeah.
It feels crucial for India's future. Deep tech innovation within our startup zone. We've seen a lot of buzz around the success of consumer-focused apps,
Okay.
the ones delivering food or groceries super fast.
Oh, absolutely.
But recently there's been this observation, even from government figures, about a perceived need to sort of accelerate deep tech innovation. What exactly are we talking about here? What is deep tech?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, what's fascinating here is the fundamental nature of these ventures. When we talk deep tech startups, we're basically referring to companies tackling really complex problems, often with a much longer term horizon.
Right. Not quick wins.
Not at all. They're built on cutting-edge science and engineering, leveraging advanced tech like artificial intelligence, machine learning, think algorithms that learn and decide, and blockchain too, for secure information. Their goal is to create truly novel, often groundbreaking solutions.
Can you give some examples?
Sure. Think about companies like Skyroot Aerospace. They're developing their own private space launch vehicles. That's deep tech.
Wow, okay.
Or Sarvam AI, focusing on building generative AI models specifically for India. These aren't your typical app companies with quick turnarounds. They require significant, often prolonged research and development.
Right, so the challenges they face are likely quite different from, say, a food delivery app startup.
Exactly. The hurdles are pretty distinct.
What are some of the major ones holding back deep tech growth in India?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, maybe for your UPSC understanding, a primary challenge is funding, availability of capital. Compared to other major global players, the level of both government and private capital investment in Indian tech, especially in these high-risk, long-gestation deep tech areas, it's been comparatively lower.
How much lower are we talking?
Well, to give you a sense of scale, total tech investment in India between 2014 and 2024 is estimated around, $160 billion?
Okay.
China, in the same period, attracted something like $845 billion.
That's a huge difference.
It really is. And furthermore, India's venture capital culture often tends to prioritize faster returns on investment. That doesn't always align well with the long, sometimes uncertain journey of deep tech. You need what people often call patient capital for these fundamental breakthroughs,
That makes sense. Investing in the long haul, not just immediate gains. What other factors are holding deep tech back? It can't just be money, right?
No, absolutely not. Another critical aspect impacting the ecosystem significantly is our education and research infrastructure. There's a recognized gap, let's say, in the quality of higher education, particularly in science and engineering. And those crucial links between industry and academic research institutions, they're often quite weak.
So a skills gap, too.
Yeah, definitely contributes to a shortage of the readily available, highly skilled workforce needed by these deep tech companies. And we also still see the persistent issue of brain drain, where talented researchers and engineers might seek opportunities elsewhere, perhaps where infrastructure is more advanced. All these factors, collectively impede the development of a really strong, thriving deep tech ecosystem here.
I imagine the regulatory environment must play a big part, too. Ease of doing business and all that.
Precisely. Policy uncertainty, regulatory hurdles. They can significantly impact things. This could include challenges accessing credit, navigating complex tax policies, maybe import barriers on specialized equipment they need.
Red tape.
Oh, yes. Add bureaucratic red tape, potential corruption when trying to get approvals. It all adds up and complicates things for these often quite nascent ventures.
Okay, so we've identified some key challenges. Funding, talent pipeline, regulatory hurdles.
Yeah.
What's the proposed way forward? What's the roadmap to actually boost deep tech in India?
Well, the suggested solutions generally involve a multi-pronged approach, which is something to note for policy-related questions in your prep. On the policy front, there's a strong push for referendums. Things like dedicated R&D grants specifically for deep tech,
All right.
facilitating easier access to regulatory sandboxes, controlled environments where startups can test prototypes without facing the full weight of existing rules immediately. That's key.
Like a safe space to experiment.
Exactly. And logistical support for commercializing these innovations, taking them from lab to market. That's vital too. And fundamentally, developing specialized deep tech-focused skill programs to bridge that workforce gap we talked about.
What about the crucial investment side? More funding.
Right. To promote greater investment, suggestions include setting up dedicated deep tech innovation funds, perhaps with government backing, and creating co-investment programs. These would aim to sort of incentivize VCs to invest alongside government or other institutions sharing the risk.
Makes sense. De-risking it a bit.
Yeah. And finally, fundamental education reform, focusing on stronger industry-academia collaboration. That's critical for a consistent talent pipeline.
This really raises a big question, learner. As you think about India's economic future, how can India effectively balance the, undeniable success of its consumer tech industry with this crucial need for deep tech breakthroughs, the kind that have that long-term societal and economic impact?
Okay, shifting gears now, let's focus on another area seeing significant regulatory activity, Karnataka and its efforts around online betting and gaming.
Right, I saw headlines about this.
Yes, the state government has recently formed a dedicated committee. The specific aim is drafting new legislation in this pretty complex area. The main goals seem to be curbing the fraud that can happen in the, largely unregulated online space, and providing a more structured, maybe supportive environment for the legitimate, responsible gaming sector.
Okay, for someone perhaps new to this topic, can we quickly clarify? What do we mean by gambling in this context? What are the key bits?
Certainly. At its core, gambling here usually involves three key elements. First, consideration, something of value, usually money that you stake or risk.
Okay, the bet.
Exactly. Second, an element of chance. The outcome is uncertain, outside your direct control. And third, the possibility of a reward, something valuable you gain if you win. Consideration, chance, reward.
Got it. So why this specific push now for regulation, especially online? These things have been around.
Several reasons are driving this. Firstly, better monitoring and enforcement. There's a growing recognition, actually highlighted in the Law Commission's 276 report, that just banning these online activities hasn't really worked effectively.
But it just goes underground.
Precisely. Regulation offers a potential path to legalize and therefore better control and oversee these activities. Secondly, tackling the serious issue of match fixing, especially in sports.
Oh, yes.
By regulating online betting, the hope is it could deter unethical involvement by sports people trying to influence outcomes. The Justice Lodha Committee raised this concern regarding cricket, remember?
I do.
And finally, there's a substantial economic angle. Curbing black money. Industry estimates, like from FICCI, suggest legalizing and regulating could unlock significant revenue, maybe 12,000 to 19,000 crore, that could then enter the formal economy.
Wow, okay. But it's probably not that simple, is it? Must be complexities, concerns with regulation, too.
Oh, absolutely. One of the most persistent debates is that tricky distinction between games of skill and games of chance.
The classic legal battle.
Exactly. Is sports betting, especially with analysis, more like horse racing, often permitted because skill is involved? Or is it pure chance? This goes way back, legally. The RMD Chamar Bagawala case in 1957 touched on this, saying skill-based activities could be legitimate commerce.
But drawing that line online must be tough.
Very tough. Especially with how diverse and fast-moving online games are, it's a real challenge for regulators.
And what about the bigger picture? India's federal structure, how does that fit in?
Crucial point, especially for your UPSC perspective on federalism. Betting and gambling is constitutionally a state subject, meaning states have the primary power to legislate on it within their borders.
So Karnataka can make its own laws,
But any move raises questions about federalism, the division of powers between center and states. Potential for jurisdictional conflicts can arise.
And what about states like Goa that rely on gambling tourism? Any impact there?
That's another consideration. States like Goa use land-based casinos as major tourist draws and revenue sources. Regulations in one state, particularly around online gambling, could indirectly impact the tourism sectors of states relying on physical gambling spots. It's interconnected.
So what's the current regulatory landscape Karnataka is working within? What rules are already out there?
Well, at the national level, there are the IT Rules 2021 and the amendment from 2023. These set up a kind of co-regulatory system for online real money games, focusing on things like platform verification, grievance mechanisms, transparency, and policies.
Okay.
Plus, various states already have their own specific acts. Assam, Goa, Daman, and Dio. They have laws governing betting and gaming in their territories. Karnataka's new law will need to navigate this existing patchwork.
It really highlights, learner, the balancing act for future administrators, weighing potential revenue against public safety, fraud prevention, and individual liberties. A complex task.
Moving on to another rapidly evolving digital space, influencer marketing in India. This sector's seen explosive growth, projected to hit, 3,375 crore by 2026? Huge market.
Massive.
And in response to growing concerns, particularly around consumer protection, industry leaders have taken a proactive step, launching the India Influencer Governing Council, or IIGC.
Okay, self-regulation then. Who's involved in this IIGC?
It includes major platforms like Meta, Google, plus various influencer marketing agencies, creators themselves. Pretty broad industry participation.
They want to get ahead of the curve.
Seems like it. Their main action so far is introducing a code of standards, a kind of rule book, and they've also rolled out weekly influencer ratings, trying to bring more transparency and accountability, it seems.
So what specific concerns drove this? Why the need for regulation, even self-regulation?
Several key issues. One major one: consumer misinformation and sometimes outright fraud. Influencers promote all sorts of things, right? Health supplements, maybe crypto schemes, sometimes without proper checks.
Right. Claims might not be verified.
Exactly. Regulation aims for accountability, ensuring claims are substantiated. Another big concern: potential exploitation of vulnerable audiences, especially minors who might be swayed by endorsements for age-inappropriate stuff like alcohol or gambling.
That makes perfect sense. Consumer Protection 101. Any other motivations?
Yeah, a few others. Unregulated campaigns can create unfair competition with traditional advertising, which faces stricter rules on truthfulness and disclosure.
Leveling the playing field, sort of.
Kind of.
Yeah.
There are also growing concerns about mental health impacts. Unrealistic beauty standards may be pushed by excessive photo editing or filters. The code might touch on needing disclaimers there.
Interesting.
And finally, maybe a perceived gap in platform accountability, making platforms more responsible for monitoring harmful content shared by influencers on their sites.
So can you give us a peek inside this code of standards? What are some key points?
Sure. A fundamental one is mandatory, prominent disclosure of paid partnerships. Influencers need to be clear when content is sponsored.
No more hiding #ad tiny font.
Hopefully not. Also, regarding brand relations, it says influencers should genuinely support products they endorse and avoid conflicts, like promoting direct competitors simultaneously without disclosure. Interestingly, it even covers AI influencers.
Really? Virtual influencers?
Yeah. It says they must follow the same rules as humans, including disclosing they're not human. It also mentions defluence, allowing honest, truthful criticism of brands, as long as it's responsible and not misleading.
So negative reviews are okay if fair.
Seems so. And specific guidelines for child-safe content, positive, age-appropriate stuff. Importantly, they've set up a consumer complaint forum under the IIGC to handle grievances.
It's fascinating to see the industry try to regulate itself. Makes you wonder, learner. How effective can self-regulation really be in such a fast-moving digital world? Will formal government oversight still be needed down the line?
Okay, now let's switch tracks completely to defense technology. A significant development here. DRDO, the Defense Research and Development Organization, recently announced a successful test of an indigenously developed MKII laser-directed energy weapon system, a DDoW.
Laser weapons.
Yeah.
Sounds like science fiction.
Becoming science fact. This achievement positions India as basically the fourth country globally after the US, China, and Russia to demonstrate advanced laser weapon capabilities.
That's a major milestone for India's defense R&D. Can you tell us more about the specific system, the MKII? How does it work?
Well, it's developed entirely within India by DRDO's Center for High Energy Systems and Sciences, CHESS, in Hyderabad. How it works: it first detects targets using radar or an electro-optic system, which uses light and electronics to track things.
Okay, finds the target. Then what?
Then it directs a very intense, high-energy 30-kilowatt laser beam at it. The aim is to cause rapid structural failure or significant damage. Think melting or breaking components.
And the advantages?
Key advantages are speed. It travels at the speed of light, basically.
Yeah.
High precision and rapid effect, almost instantaneous impact.
What's the broader significance of these directed energy weapons? How do they change things in defense strategy?
The potential impact is quite revolutionary, really, across several areas. First, battle space economics. DEWs could reduce reliance on expensive traditional ammo missiles, shells.
Cheaper shots.
Potentially, yes.
Sure.
And maybe lower risk of collateral damage due to their precision. Second, counter-electronic capabilities. High-power microwave weapons, another DEW type, can disable enemy electronics radar, comms without physical destruction.
Like an EMP effect.
Sort of, yeah. Finally, they have wide applications. Tactical air defense against drones, missiles, maybe even anti-ballistic missile defense, anti-satellite roles. Lower power lasers could even be used for crowd control.
So directed energy weapons. They're fundamentally different from kinetic weapons like bullets or missiles.
Right.
What's the core difference?
You got it. Instead of kinetic energy force from a moving object, DEWs use concentrated energy. This can be electromagnetic radiation like lasers or microwaves, or even particle beams.
So energy beams, not projectiles.
Exactly. The main types are high-energy lasers, HELs, like one DRDO tested, high-power microwaves, HPMs, millimeter waves, and particle beams. Each works differently, has different applications.
As you consider India's growing defense tech capabilities,
Exactly.
think about the profound implications. How do technologies like DDWs change global security dynamics? And what does it mean for India's own defense strategy?
Okay, our final topic for this part of the deep dive. It focuses on significant concerns raised by many members of Parliament about the Digital Personal Data Protection Act, the DPDP Act of 2023.
Right, the data privacy law. What's the issue?
The concern is its potential to inadvertently weaken the Right to Information Act, the RTI Act of 2005. Over 120 MPs have reportedly voiced concerns, specifically calling for the repeal of Section 44 of the DPDP Act.
Section 44.3. What does that specific section do?
Section 44.3 of the DPDP Act directly amends Section 8.1J of the original RTI Act. Now, previously, Section 8.1J of RTI exempted personal information from disclosure unless it was related to public activity or interest, or its disclosure was warranted in the larger public interest. There was an override.
A public interest test. Basically.
Exactly, a balancing test. The public information officer could decide if the public interest in disclosure outweighed the privacy concern. But Section 44.3 of the DPDP Act changes this. It introduces a much broader prohibition, stating that no personal information shall be disclosed under the RTI Act.
So it removed that public interest override completely.
That seems to be the effect, yes. It establishes a blanket prohibition on sharing all information defined as personal information under the DPDP Act without that crucial public interest escape clause. That's the core contention.
And why is that causing so much concern? What are the main arguments against this change?
The primary worry revolves around public accountability. Critics argue this blanket exemption, especially if personal information is defined broadly, gives too much discretion to public authorities to withhold information.
Making it harder to scrutinize government actions.
Potentially, yes. Hindering citizens' ability to examine officials' decisions, demand clarity, and hold institutions accountable. There are also fundamental concerns about upsetting the constitutional balance between the right to privacy, now a fundamental right, and the right to information, which is also seen as fundamental for democracy.
This isn't a totally new debate, though, right? Balancing privacy and transparency.
Not at all. There's important context here. The Justice A.P. Shah Committee back in 2012 cautioned against data protection overriding RTI access. The Supreme Court in the Puttaswamy judgment 2017, while affirming privacy, stressed reconciling privacy and transparency with proportionality, meaning restrictions must be justified and necessary.
And previous cases.
Even earlier, in the Girish Ramchandra Deshpande case, the SC prioritized privacy but still allowed disclosure in the public interest. This new amendment seems, to critics, to move away from that established balance.
Have there been suggestions for a better way? Alternative approaches to balance these rights?
Yes. The Justice B.N. Srikrishna Committee, in its 2018 report on data protection, recommended narrower exemptions. They suggested non-disclosure only where there's a risk of significant harm, like identity theft or discrimination, not a blanket ban.
More targeted protection.
Right. Another key recommendation, often repeated, is promoting suo motu disclosure. public bodies proactively releasing information of public interest, as Section 4 of the RTI Act already encourages.
So making information public by default where possible.
Exactly. Strengthening proactive disclosure could reduce the need to seek personal info via RTI in the first place.
It's a really complex interplay, learner. Think about it for your governance studies. How will this evolving relationship between transparency and privacy shape the future of governance? How will it affect citizen engagement with the state? And that brings us to the close of this part of your deep dive for April 15th, 2025. We've covered quite a bit: India's innovation landscape, online gaming regulation in Karnataka, influencer marketing standards, defense tech advancements, and that critical debate on data protection versus RTI. All areas really crucial for your understanding of contemporary India. Remember, this is your focused briefing, hitting the essentials, and valuable revision for topics you might have seen before. We definitely encourage you to keep exploring these areas. What resonated most today? What further questions popped into your mind? Keep exploring, keep learning. And if you found this overview helpful for your UPSC prep and current affairs knowledge, please do like and subscribe for more focused analysis. We'll be back soon with part 2.